Listen up, everybody, take the cell phones out, hold them up.
Welcome to boot camp, the first day of the rest of your life.
Put your bags in front of you now. Put your paperwork on top of your bags.
Physical exertion, training, and push-ups become all you know.
We make it so you do not have to think. We will tell you everything you need to know.
I honestly thought I was going to die the first day that I arrived.
Where's the ID?
Where is your ID? I didn't tell you to put it in there! So take it out!
Yes, sir!
Each soldier is assigned a battle buddy, another newbie to watch your back, and vice versa.
Catch the cover, battle buddy! Tell me what, remember your name, battle buddy! Catch the cover, battle buddy!
Your battle buddy is responsible for keeping you safe. They push you, help you when you fall, or crawl.
Good job, you guys.
There you go!
And often, they keep you alive. But having a battle buddy was not always easy. Our nerves and bodies were pushed to the limit. We were exhausted and frankly miserable. Arguments often broke out.
Get him, left, right, down here! Left, right.
Over time, we learned tolerance, patience, and long-suffering, things that the Bible also teaches us. Of course, no one is perfect. As a new soldier, errors, like sins, occurred.
Show me your magazine. Tell me what's wrong there. What's wrong with that picture? Load it the right way!
Training and practice were constant, and in time we improved. By the end of boot camp, we were capable and ready to fight. We were a cohesive team. I want you to understand something here. The military teaches that our enemy is not from within. We held each other up and lifted one another when harmed or when injured by the enemy. Folks, there is an unseen war raging right now. Each of us, you and I, are in a battle. Each of us are soldiers, and it is our very souls that are at stake. Until the millennial kingdom, when Jesus will rule, and according to 2 Corinthians, Satan is currently God of this world. Our God and Father, the God in heaven, is in full control, but Satan is allowed the power to influence us. You and I make choices based on those influences, right or wrong. Do you fully comprehend what this means? Satan is our enemy, not each other. We are all soldiers in this battle. And if you believe like I do that the latter days are approaching quickly, then it is only logical that Satan has fewer souls in which to focus, being on those remaining believers. Remember always, we are not in a fight against each other, but against the powers and principalities of darkness.
My grandfather lived to be a ripe old age, having a fruitful and hopeful life in the Lord, full of long years, trials, blessings, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. I always adored listening to his stories, especially the war stories, which added to my image of my grandpa being such a brave soldier. I recall something in particular that stands out in my memory. The story of when his airplane crashed in a foreign land. While up in the air, the plane's engines had been hit by flak from enemy guns, and the plane was descending toward the earth rapidly. To loose the plane of some of its weight, the men aboard started to throw the heaviest items out. With each item thrown out, the plane became lighter and lighter, but that was not enough to keep them aloft until they reached Allied ground. Then the soldiers finally decided to release the heaviest thing on the plane, the ball turret. After a sincere effort made by the men to remove the ball turret, it was finally removed from the aircraft, leaving behind a gaping 5-foot hole in the floor. The pilot called for the men to assume crash position, and each of the 10 men went to their assigned positions, including my grandfather. Grandpa and his battle buddy, the radio operator, took their positions with their backs facing a bulkhead. Before the plane landed, the radio operator's last task was to shoot off a red flare to indicate to allies in the area where they were located. The operator stood up and was about to shoot off the flare, but he stood there, frozen in fear when he saw the hole in the floor and the ground rushing underneath them. My grandfather stood up from his position, seated the man in his own spot, and shot off the red flare from the airplane. He then sat down in what once had been the radio operator's spot, and they all prepared to crash. Down they went, and they braced for impact. Boom! The plane hit the ground with such an immense force that it could have crushed them all. Only by God's grace and mercy did the majority of the men survive. My grandpa's eyes opened to see the scene. He looked down and only saw his legs up to the knees. He thought that his legs had been cut off in the crash because he couldn't feel them or see them. As it turned out, it was not his legs, but the plane that had been cut in half. His legs were buried underneath the dirt, so he wiggled his way out from underneath the plane and freed himself. He looked to his side to find the radio operator, his battle buddy, dead. Allied forces found them not long after they had left the plane, and the soldiers were taken in blindfolds to a nearby hospital where they rested and healed for several months. Listening to this heroic story as a little girl had a huge impact on me and my way of thinking. In being selfless, my grandpa could have lost his life, but he gained it. So it is true when they say, "He that loveth his life shall lose it, and he that hateth his life in this world shall keep it unto life eternal." John 12:25. If he had not switched places with that fearful man, I would not be here today. Simply because Grandpa obeyed the words of Christ, given to him from the Bible, he kept his life. And when he died in 2011, he went on to keep his life for eternity.
In this battle for our very souls, Jesus sacrificed himself. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, for all sinners to be redeemed through his sacrifice. Do you understand this? What more can we do for him in return than to also make sacrifices for one another? In the military, we are recognized through awards based on honor, loyalty, performance, and perseverance. In the same way, Matthew 5:12 tells us to rejoice and be glad, because great is our reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Jesus knew we would be persecuted. He knew the battle ahead of us. The prophetic signs tell us that it's 2 minutes to midnight, which means our part in the spiritual war is almost over. In these times, remember to put on the full armor of God. Be strong and fight the good fight. When Jesus returns, crowns and rewards await us for our part in this spiritual battle.
Please remember what the Lord has commanded us. Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets."
Be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand,